Welcome to the InsurTech Business Series podcast. We are biased for Africa because we are Africans and we believe that we need to innovate for Africa. And so today we have an interesting conversation ahead of us. And Joel, welcome.
Thanks, Damola. I'm super excited to be here and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. I mean, we were speaking earlier. Third time is a charm. I mean, we tried to book this for the longest, but I mean, there've been a lot of things happening on our side, on your side. But I mean, that's good, right? You were speaking some weeks ago about some of the partnerships that you've been working on. But before we go into all of that, just like we do, who is Joel?
All right. So Joel is a father, he's a husband, and he runs Morisho as a techie. So studied computer science somewhere in Uganda, Makerere University. I did a short stint at MIT as well, but purely just on the computing side of things. And I pretty much stumbled into insurance, to be honest, where it's both a personal story and also something that on the entrepreneurial side of myself, I basically was able to craft something, easy guy, right? And I pride myself in trying to not only uplift others, also just try to help push, the African context or the African challenges and seeing how we as Africans can then go ahead and create or curate solutions that then work for the majority of us who really need some of these solutions out here, but it's super hard to get them in the context or in the space that they might need it.
You mentioned that you're a techie, and one of the things that I've seen, just like I heard somewhere, the change that we want to see within this space is going to be brought in from the outside. I mean, do you share this sentiment, or from your experience so far?
I believe so. I think what I've noticed is if you spend too much time doing the same thing, you kind of get that sort of tunnel vision, or you get a bit comfortable, right? So you go with the flow essentially, right? So what we've seen in the space is when we interact with insurance companies or partners is people are so stuck up in their ways that they don't, most guys are not interested in seeing something else. And if you think about change essentially, right, the key ingredients to basically bringing change is, having a divergent opinion or a divergent view on something, right? So what we're noticing, especially around the InsurTech space, is people coming in from different forms of backgrounds and essentially being able to come look at this thing in a whole different lens and see what can we do from an outsider's perspective to then try and see if we can really drive the penetration of insurance within the African context and even in emerging markets. And I'm a bit biased on this, but I would say I feel like the outsiders will actually bring the change that is needed within the insurance space. That's my point of view.
Piggybacking on what Damola said, I wanted to ask, what exactly were your inspiration or what motivated you to start Motishow?
Right. So I think for me was, as I said earlier, it was purely from a personal story. So back in, I think, 2018, I lost one of my favorite cousins to a border accident. And basically, we defaulted to what Africans do, which is like the normal coping mechanisms of can we do a fundraising event to then, give him the last respect, right? And then the challenge for me was the family he left behind, right? Someone had to take care of that, right? So I was very curious about that, and I tried to figure out did he not have any form of protection around his own life, or in the event something happened, what then happens to his family, right? So when I did a bit of research is when I found out that the way insurance is structured, especially around the border side, was a bit skewed towards the asset itself, that's a bike, as opposed to the rider themselves, right? So the traditional products that we have right now in Kenya are, there are two types mostly. There's a comprehensive insurance and then there's a third-party insurance. But even for both, unless you get an extra or what they call the rider products, like a personal accident cover, then you're not covered, right? So in the event of an accident, you basically have to take care of your own medical bills and those sort of things, or even last respect or last expense that is purely borne out of pocket by the customer. So for me, that's kind of like what triggered the whole creation of MultiSure, because I went down a rabbit hole to try and figure out, okay, what does this mean for the riders, and how many of these people actually are aware that you might have to get extra products to then protect yourself in the event of an accident. I spent a bit of time talking to different riders. I think we did eventually we ended up talking to over 600 of them throughout the country in different pockets, and just try to figure out what products do they have, do they work for them, what do they want to see in a typical insurance product that then caters to their needs. And that's how we ended up kind of coming up with a very fast initial draft where riders, were saying, we went around the country and got riders to basically itemize things based on the order of priority of what they would want in the event of an accident or if something happened to them, right? Now, out of that, we then ended up curating, picking the top 5 products or the top 5 benefits they would want to see, and started sourcing for an insurance company to help us underwrite that. That's like a conversation we can have, but it was not easy to create the kind of products that the riders wanted. So we started seeing the disconnects between the underwriters and the products that exist in the market and the customer, right? And for us, we strongly believe that that's one of the reasons as to why the insurance penetration is this low, because there's a very huge disconnect between customers and the products that they want to see or that could work for them.
Sorry about your experience, and then this is in 2 parts, because the experience has also helped in a way to see the need for insurance in that space. So after you did the market research, and of course, because MultiSure is not particularly the insurance company that actually provides actual cover. So I want to believe that MultiSure is like the intermediary between the border guys and insurance incumbent that then provides the cover. How are you able to manage that, what you found in the market, and also get the buying of maybe the insurance regulators as well as the insurance company that provides the ultimate cover? Because there is some sort of I don't want to say impression, but I think over time analysis have shown that the border are that's one of the riskiest means of transportation, and especially in a place like Nigeria, people are always very evasive about insuring them. So how are you able to manage that and build a product around these people?
Border is bike riders, by the way.
It's interesting you asked that, because I think when we started out back in 2021, we actually couldn't get a local underwriter to then give us the product we wanted the way we wanted it, right? So what ended up happening is we got into the Bima Lab program. That is a program powered by the Insurance Regulatory Authority of Kenya, in conjunction with FSD Africa and a couple of, I think it was Prudential that was also sponsoring that as well. And it was an accelerator program for a couple of months. And I think through that, we really got to get some extra insights into the whole structure. And then also through that, I had reached out to Richard Lefley. I'm sure you guys already know him. And he was one of the speakers at the second Bima Lab that we were part of. And we started having conversations around, hey, we wanted this product. We really are struggling to get an underwriter to take care of the product. Basically provide the product for us. And we would really like your help, right? So what ended up happening initially was MultiSure partnered with now MIC Global, then it was Microinsurance here in Kenya, and it was a brokerage, right? So through them, they were able to help us structure the product and also helped us get the very first, underwriter. I think that was APA through a conversation, I think that involved Swiss Re as well. But basically just looking at it from Richard saw what we were trying to, basically provide in the market, and he saw the need as well as we did. And he was able to have that conversation with the underwriter to then give us the product. So I think after that, it was just basically more of you go prove yourself. Let's see. And then I think when we started pushing the conversation a bit further is when we started getting a lot more attention from the insurance companies the other insurance companies. And we're happy to say we are working with a couple of them as we speak.
Fantastic. That's been an interesting journey. Again, it was good to have the accelerator program like Bima Lab, and then we've been seeing the majority of their works and how they've been able to drive InsurTech space across the continent, which is interesting to know.
Yeah, like we always cooking, so there's a lot of exciting happening, right? So like we are really bullish about trying to figure out how can we help or enable as many Africans, right, get some form of insurance or some form of cover or what they call, some social protection or something that then takes care of them, right? So we started off with mobility, right, as a sector. And the reason for that was we looked at what was the one thing that is common across, the continent, and then how can we tap into that, right? So that's why we ended up with mobility. And what we started off with was a personal accident cover that then takes care of not only the driver or the rider. We've also introduced now what you're calling a passenger or commuter cover. That is essentially like a trip-based insurance where, you pay us up like almost 10 cents to the dollar for a trip from one point to the other, and you basically have some form of protection. Now, the whole point for us is saying, like, from talking to so many different sector players and talking to so many of these customers, our goal is essentially to provide the cheapest, most affordable insurance product to as many people as we can. And then later on is once they start seeing the value of, how that protection then kicks in, it's then now being able to come and upsell or cross-sell different products to them, right? For Africans, especially the target market that we specialize in, which is like the bottom of the pyramid guys, over 70 or 80% of them have had zero experience with any form of insurance. That's the context, right? So you'll get a guy, what we call here in Kenya, mama mboga, which means like a kiosk or like a small trader selling vegetables by the roadside. And, she has a family, she has people to take care of, but does not have any health sort of insurance, doesn't have any education policy or life policy or anything of the sort, and has never, purchased, any of the insurance products. And what we're saying is now when she's going to the market, she can actually pay, it's 10 shillings in Kenya, which is like 10 cents to the dollar or less, and actually experience the first interaction with insurance, right? So in the event of something that happens to her, she can actually make a claim and get a benefit paid out to her. So that was our core focus. Like it's a small ticket size, but with huge benefits that take care of different items, such as whether it's disability, whether it's medical expenses, whether it's getting an ambulance to her, as well as death, is then saying, can you pay this small amount, and then we'll give you something close to like $500, for example, in medical. And then once they see the value vis-a-vis the cost, right, most of them get curious, right? Like I think Kenyans mostly are curious people. The patterns we started noticing in our data is for people who've purchased, right, and within either their network or their circles or association, someone actually got a payment in a claim. Then there's a spiral effect or there's a network effect that then happens that makes them even more curious of like, okay, what else can you offer us, right? That's what we've seen in terms of progression, in terms of the customers' requests. So we're saying that we want to cover as many Africa, like our target is 600 million customers, right, within Africa, and we're using mobility as an entry point. But we are happy to layer on different products down the road. But what we've seen is the one, whether it's a school-going kid, whether it's a guy going to work, a guy going to his business, whether it's the riders or the Okada guys who are busy ferrying either goods or people. Almost half the continent moves at some point during the day, right? That's our target market. That's what we want to tap into.
We would like to see more of this.
Yeah, we will get updated.
You spoke about people getting to enjoy insurance, for example, for the first time. And which is a start that I'm even more interested in from your engagement, from the product perspective and customers that you've had. from your data, from your experience, how important is claims payment? And especially, for some of these micro products, small size products, what opportunities lie within that space?
I like the fact that you asked that question, because it's something I've been trying to push for, even within our space, where we are saying, listen, the whole point of insurance is you to benefit, of course, in the event of something that happened, right? But from where I sit, we've started looking at ways where the customer can benefit even as they wait for an event to happen, right? So the more the claims, right, in terms of being paid out, the more the acquisition of new customers. And I find that I always have a challenge with with the insurance players where, someone will tell you, okay, the claim ratio can go over 40 or 60 or 80, whatever the percentage is. And I'm always wondering, I don't understand, you're in the risk business, right? But you're more risk averse than, so
Yeah.
It's always interesting. But from what we see, what we've been trying to do is incorporating ways where customers get a cashback of some sort or some benefit through the insurance that we provide. I'll give you an example. For our border cover, in case a guy doesn't claim for the year, we actually give $5 back to the customer at the end of the year, right? Now, what we've noticed is that for every claim that has been paid, there's almost 100% uptake within their ecosystem, right? In terms of organic or a reference, or where someone will come in and say, hey, Damola actually recommended me to you guys. You guys paid a claim to him, and I'm happy to start paying you the premiums, right? And I find that most insurance companies don't get that, in terms of you need to pay as many claims as possible to make people trust the insurance process, trust the whole fact that you sold him a product or her a product. And when something happened to them, they actually paid, right? But what you find is within the claims process for most institutions is that it's so complicated, and it's such a lengthy process that it stops making any sense, right? So I'll give you an example of, in Kenya, for example, if you had a comprehensive insurance cover and you got into an accident with another, let's say, hit another car, what usually happens is that you essentially have to go sue that particular person, right? And then, then the insurance will then be appointed, or they'll appoint a lawyer, and then you go through the processes of the legal process, which could take years, right? For most of them, it takes maybe 1 or 2 years just to sort out through the legal process, right? So you can imagine a customer who who needs this vehicle to move around, or this particular asset, or this is the border, or whatever means of transport they are using, or they are just going to work, right? But then if you're asking that customer to wait for 2 years to get a payout, right? Then in the following year, what you'll definitely have is a chance from that particular customer, right? Because they'll feel we paid a premium when you needed the premium paid, and you promised that you're going to actually sort this out. But then when that happened, you made the process so complicated for myself that I didn't even I hated the experience, right? That's what that's usually the sentiments around when you go, for example, for us, we never sell insurance to any of these customers, because if you mention the word insurance in a sitting, over half of the people who are there just walk out. That's what happens, right? So you have to change the lingo, you have to change the approach, you have to try and.
So what lingo do you use?
So for us, we talk about protection, we talk about cover, a cover. We don't mention insurance in any of our, activations or onboarding or anything of the sort, because that word has already been it's synonymous with, not paying. Already when someone hears, they're like, okay, do they pay? That's some of the questions we get from these riders or these particular communities you're targeting, where, everyone is worried that if they pay when they need it, it might not come through, right? And that's a narrative we really are trying to push and change, and saying listen, let's give you a product that then works for you, right? And we guarantee that we will push this thing through the insurance company and ensure that, when a claim is lodged either through our system, or from a customer that we've engaged, there's a quicker turnaround time, right? Like for us, we've limited it to like at least 3 to 5 days maximum of you getting a payment out, right? So you don't have to go to court. You don't have to go through that complicated process of involving the police and all that. On our end, we're using technology to like help fast track that, make it super easy for customers, all within the comfort of their own phones. Yeah?
Okay, so in terms of going back to claims payment now, for where you're unable to reach like an agreement with the underwriters, do you sometimes pay out of pocket?
Yeah.
Just so the rationale behind this is because, again, for you to be able to build trust from your customers, sometimes there are some sacrifices that has to be made. So in terms of prioritizing whether to pay the claims and get like a larger consumer conversion, or to go with the narrative that the underwriter is repudiating the claim, and then you have to go back to face your customers and say, well, they're not paying you, and those people again, because once it is on the street, word of mouth is like the most powerful advertisement instrument that these guys use.
Yeah.
And then they go back to say that these guys are just fraudulent. So how do you manage that?
Hi, this is Richard Leftley from the Microinsurance company. I'm getting in touch from the UK today, and it's great to be with you. I think the message I want to share is that insurance for low-income people is really, really difficult to get working properly. It's really a distribution challenge, and finding a way to partner with other organizations in order to reach scale rapidly is essential if you want to have a breakthrough. Good luck in doing that, and I hope to cross paths with many of you in the future.
So I might get into some, hot waters here, but essentially for us, that's something we've done before, right? Where, for example, like we had one incident last year where the rider actually, I think they amputated his hand. It was a bit of a serious, it's meant to be a disability sort of cover. And from the accident, the guy had no recollections of even he lost a bit of memory, right? So when the wife reached out to us, right, we of course had to process a claim and send it to the underwriter. And what we noticed was there was a lot of of course the insurance company has to do their due diligence and make sure they validate some of the claim that are coming through just to avoid fraud. But for us, we saw that was taking a bit longer than we expected or we needed it to. And what we ended up doing is actually using some of our reserves on multi-insurer side to actually pay out a part of that particular claim, right? So some of the conversations that we're having with most insurance companies is saying hey, can we create a bit of a fund, right, where we can get some underwriting permissions or get an underwriting pen where we can actually use that to pay the claims a bit faster, and then we reconcile once their process is done, right? That's gonna be super important because ideally for us, it's looking at how fast can you resolve that claim for the customer, right? So we've introduced things like smart contracts, and we're working out to just align how it all works, for the customer. Where if it's a smart contract, we say, let's say unlock $50 for example, in case and that happens, and then that sort of gives that customer a guarantee that I know if that claim happens, at least I'll get some some stipend out of it, right? So so that's something we've done before, but what we've been seeing is as long as you have a good relationship with your underwriter and you actually step up the game in terms of validating, verifying the claims, because we work in a bit of a different model. We don't just accept any customer. So by the time a customer is actually onboarded onto our platform, right, we have quite a bit of data about them. We have, our own ways of verifying some of these claims. We have an agency network throughout the country. We have a lot more things we do, even with things like what they call the DCI, that's the Criminal Investigation Department of the Police, just to make sure that by the time we bubble the claim back to the underwriter, we've sort of like pre-checked most of the things and made sure that this is a legit claim and it can be vouched for on different aspects, right? So once you do all those things and you're using technology to do that, and then you introduce things like smart contracts and and get permission from the underwriter to then be able to pay claims up to a certain amount of money, then what we notice is that the customer experience is much better, even as they wait for the actual claim to be processed.
Oh, okay. Like you mentioned, because I was going to come back to asking about possibility or probability of fraudulent claims. Has there been any occurrence since you started?
Yeah, so I had the most weird incident when we just started out, and that's why I say like for us, the way we do our onboarding is we really spend a lot of time doing customer education. That's the hard part, right? So you have to make sure the customers understand. And that came off of the fact that we thought we just build a digital product, talk to the customers, and see the product is their own creation. It would be an easy conversion. But what we noticed when we started out, we had an incident where I think I had over 800 border guys that we try to provide the insurance product for. And part of our onboarding communication was, for us, we pay a claim within 3 to 5 working days, right? As soon as you give us all the documentation that we need, right? So most of the guys paid for a month. And then in 5 days, I had a whole, I think over 400 riders, all driving to my office to ask for a claim of $500, right? So that was the most insane thing I've ever done, because we had to step in and diffuse the situation by, just going back to the basics of what we had talked to them about in terms of, you separate them by saying whoever has had an actual accident, step on the side, those sort of things, right? So we've seen that in the space where guys, they're depending on the education of the customer or the disposition in life, right? Some customers will try and take advantage or look at loopholes maybe within the system, or look at ways of, even colluding with institutions like hospitals, give us a medical receipt and a report and all these other things. But what we did for us is, it's really I love the fact that happened initially when we started out, because that changed a lot of our operations in terms of not only how we educate, but also who do we onboard, right? So we ended up creating an agency network of people who are they're border chairmen. So these guys are super structured, right? They are organizing groups within their own, whether it's the town they are in, or the the what they call constituencies here in Kenya. It's like there you guys have states, right? What you notice is that for guys who are part of a larger body, right, like a circle, for example, from one part of the country, and they actually have even a welfare fund and all these other things that they do a contribution, we use that particular chairman at that particular place to be our agent, and they're the first point of verification of any claim. Now, this chairman is probably in charge of between 1,000 and up to 5,000 of these riders. So, and he's a guy who feels the biggest pinch, because every time these guys get into accidents, they come back to him to ask him, can we do a fundraising event for a rider who died, for a rider who got into an accident, for one who's admitted in the hospital, right? So once we took the product, we even started changing how we go. We take the product to the market, where we start with the chairman, and then we take time to educate them, show them how the product works, and then show them the benefit, and then also give him tactics of verifying some of these claims before it's bubbled up to us. What's happening right now is, for any claim that comes to us, it goes through three steps within the structure of the border associations, depending on where the guy is located, right? So what that does is that by the time the actual regional chairman actually approves and confirms to us, right, a couple of things have happened in there, right? There's a police element to it for verification. The chairman themselves actually do the due diligence of actually going to the hospitals and verifying that claim happened. On this other side, on what we built on WhatsApp, right? They have to take pictures of them in the hospital and all these other things. So there are a couple of different strategies and different levels of how we validate some of these claims. I might not share a lot, but we have like, I think, an 8-step process that then by the time we are sending all that to the underwriter, like, once they go and also do their own verification, they'll come back with the same conclusion of the exact amount spent, the exact, the accident, what happened, the report from the police, and all these other, and also from the chairman who are in charge of these border guys, right? So we stopped onboarding like masses, just anyone, to a bit more structure and a bit more other data points. Like, for example, all our riders must have a family. That's very critical for us. Because what we notice is that the guys who had families were a bit more careful and a bit more less risky, right? And also, they didn't seem very keen on defrauding things for one reason or the other. So for us, we've just been building based on experiences. So you encounter something, you work out a strategy or a solution around it, customer, and then end up coming up with something that then takes care of everyone across the value chain.
Yeah, and it's interesting from your conversation. I see that yes, you enter into the market, but you're able to learn quickly, change your model, change the way that you're engaging with customers, adjust in real time. That's not something that the insurance industry is known for. From the regulatory point of view, why is the Kenyan space able to do what they're able to do? Again, what I'm referring to is majority of this insurance innovation that we're seeing coming from Kenya, even though if you look at a market like Nigeria, for example, has a large market, which you would expect that, there are a lot more players within this space. Also looking at the fact that the fintech space in Nigeria is the largest on the continent.
I think we are fortunate to have like a regulator who's pro-innovation. I think that's not as easy to find, right? Considering insurance is a very highly regulated industry. I think for us, we've seen the IRA like really step up and really trying to push the penetration a bit further. And that's how they enable some of us to be able to position some of these products or take some of these products to market, using technology and trying to figure out new ways of doing distribution or claim administration or whatever it is. And I think for us, the fact that we went through the Bima Lab program as well, sort of like enabled us to be able to not only be on the within the reach of the IRA as well, but also use them to then help us strategically position some of the things that we're doing. Of course, with their consent, right? And the underwriter's consent as well, and see because we all have the same goal, which is how do we cover as many people as possible, right? So I think the IRA has really done a fantastic job in creating an enabling environment for InsurTechs to be able to then push products, push innovation, and test a lot of things. What we've actually been requesting from them is saying, how can we then even use what we are learning, within the Kenyan space to then passport these products to other countries, for example, in Nigeria, right? One of the biggest challenges in Africa is how fragmented, we are in terms of it doesn't make sense if the IRA approves here and everything checks out, right? Why NICOM in Nigeria cannot, basically leverage the connection they have within the IRA here in Kenya to then help us keep some of the steps that we might have to do, which means then I can come into Nigeria as quickly as possible, right? Test that, and we are happy to provide any sort of reporting, give them visibility into whatever we're doing, and just say okay, then it means that I can quickly take my products, my learnings, our technology to 6 other countries as quickly as possible. And all I'll have to do is just get some introduction from the IRA to the regulator in that particular country, and them actually comparing notes based on what the law says in that particular country and seeing what works, and we can quickly even tweak things that don't work in that particular country.
Yeah. And I agree with you. Those are some of the things that we've seen. So when you look at the space generally, right, the InsurTech space is a growing ecosystem across the continent, right? And part of things that we are keen on at the InsurTech Business Series is how can we galvanize the space? How can we encourage people to come into the space? Those who are in the space, how can they learn from people like you who are some bit ahead? And so that's why we have this kind of engagement. What do you think the future is? What are things that you think would shape the future of the InsurTech space? Yes, I know, for example, regulation, definitely, just like you gave example of what the IRA is doing. I know that Bima Lab started off in Kenya, and we've had in Ghana, we've had in Nigeria. So there's a Pan-African one right now currently running. But yeah, beyond regulation, what do you think the future of insurance innovation and technology will be?
That's an interesting question. So I think the beauty of technology for me is super critical in terms of what technology can enable people do, right? So we look at things like there's the African, free intercontinental trade agreement. I think that was signed. I'm yet to see something that is happening in that particular space, but that would be super to enable insurance, innovation happen. And, but I think for us, even from where we sit and what we've been trying to do is because we talk to as many InsurTechs in the space as possible as well, as multi-sure. And what we've been seeing is, there are different ways of, skinning this particular chicken, right? So, we've seen things that have worked for, what we call the B2C model, right, in Kenya, and that's leveraging things like WhatsApp, for example, right? Now, if you look at across Africa, what you'll notice is that the social media sort of like sites that people are keen on, I think WhatsApp is one of the highest in the continent. If you look at the data that has been published before, over 90% of users, right, are on WhatsApp, right? So for us, it's like looking at how do we leverage those sort of existing technologies without having to create that fatigue of apps for users, and see can I partner with Curacell, for example, in Nigeria, and use our own experience and the technology we built here in Kenya to distribute to the masses in a very efficient way. And can I take that technology and open it up to any of the InsurTechs in the space or insurance companies who are keen on a different model of distribution, and use that then to do that in the different countries, right? The fact that WhatsApp is already regulated, for example, in Nigeria, it means that if I partnered with someone in Nigeria, I can give them the technology and then they can push the product down there, right? So in terms of scale, that's what we as MultiSure are looking at, and looking at it from a point of view where we're saying we think technology could actually unlock a lot of these things and a lot of collaborations and partnerships between the underwriters, the different InsurTechs in the space, the regulators as well, and also even the government, right? I think that's one of the things that people don't talk about a lot in terms of government involvement, right? But some of these trade agreements that are signed between countries probably should include, service providers who are actually keen on innovating on a space, be allowed to work, in the different countries, right? So, I see that, right? Because I get bashed for saying we have to get products to the customer and then use the customer's engagement, learnings to then build extra products, right? If embedded is the easiest route, right, for everyone, right? So I want to embed my products in anything and everything. But the truth is, if we really want to change or increase that particular penetration, right, we have to do the hard things, which is one of the hard things is actually educating that particular customer, right? So I personally truly believe that with education, right, my attention has been that high because we've done a lot of education, right? And then if I just embedded that product in one of the highest consumed product within my space, for example, we did a play for fuel. I think I mentioned this to you a while back. And yes, it's a good way to go to market. It's a good way to get quick customers and retain the customers. But what ends up happening is that over time, if it's so embedded, the customer forgets about the product. So even in the event that they have an accident or need to make a claim, more often than not, it's not front of mind, right, for the customer. So we look at those things and say, like, there's some industries that I feel from where we sit and what we've seen, they will work better if we actually spend time within government, right? Like, for example, in Kenya, the IRA does a lot of community engagements, a lot of education of these customers to try and create that awareness. And I feel like even we as InsurTech should actually, or the insurance players, including the insurance company, should actually create serious budgets around customer education that will lead to customer retention, right? Like, I feel like in the future, the one who perfects the simplest education is going to be the last man standing, if I'm to say that.
Yeah. Again, there has to be lots of education, awareness about insurance on our continent, because I think, like you said, that's like one of the major aspects that is currently lacking. It's not the fact that there's no insurance, and it's not the fact that insurance is, not does not help with, financial planning. It's just the fact that there's been a lot of, communication gap and understanding or education around, the benefits that insurance can provide. And I think, like you said, I like the fact that you said in your communication that you try to remove the word insurance, because it doesn't seem like a lot of people can relate to it. In fact, when they relate to it, they already have, like, a bad impression about, the word itself, insurance. So yes, we agree with you on that. So before we let you go, we'd like to ask, like, what's next for MultiSure?
Yeah, I think, as I said, when I started, like, our goal is to at least touch 600 million lives. So it's a super, what we call the big, hairy, audacious goal, right? That's and we want to do that within the emerging markets, right? So we have, right now we have so many partnerships, like, in the works, even in Nigeria as well, Ghana, a couple of countries, where we are, as I said, we've started opening up our own platform and our own system to other partners who will be keen to leverage what we've built so far, to then see if that works for them in their own particular countries, including countries like Peru and India. And we've done a couple of tests across the board just to see how would it all work in the different countries, right? So in terms of scale, we're looking at, probably in the next couple of months, we should be at least in like 4 or 5 countries, and using our technology in those countries and collaborating with existing players and, pushing the narrative as much as we can. So we don't think from where we sit, we can passport the actual products, right? In terms of, like, the way it's configured. Unless, the customers also in those particular countries are keen on something similar to that, right? We like innovating from the customer backwards. So what we do, like, for example, if I came to Nigeria, we would actually spend a lot of time with the customers first, and then build products that work for them. But then on our technology, it's versatile enough to be able to, curate any type of product and use, and not, like, ask a customer to again download another application, which, like, I feel is a very huge app fatigue, to be honest. So on our end, what you're doing is we either provide you a platform through our API, that's one, or two, we build a chatbot for you on WhatsApp or any social media site that you're interested in, and embed that product within what customers use on a normal day. And that enables you quickly distribute products, have a higher retention, and have customers have a very good experience when it comes to purchasing of your products. So that's what we want to focus on the next couple of months and push it to as many people as possible, and keep pushing the narrative of insurance.
Fantastic. We would like to see majority of these things in the coming months, and we'll continue to keep in touch with you to see how this has grown to the other regions that you have identified. For our audience, if we were to reach out to you, How would they do that?
Right. They can always go to our website. That's motisure.com, or they can send a hello@motisure.com via email. We're happy to always connect, always to, talk to different players within the industry, investors as well. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. That's Joel Masharia. And we're happy to engage anyone who's interested in keeping an eye on what's happening within the InsurTech space. And also for the InsurTech players out there, especially in Africa, we do have I think Damola will help me on this one, but we do have a WhatsApp group that we created a while back for all InsurTech players, people in the insurance space that are keen on having a conversation. And we're happy to share a link with any of you that might be keen on it.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely. Yeah, it's been interesting speaking. Great to have you, here on the podcast to go deeper into what you're doing. And we're happy to be hearing from you. We look forward to hearing more from you as regards how you're growing, expanding as well. Thank you very much for joining and sharing as much as you did.
Thanks, Damola. Thanks for Lume. It's been great having this conversation with you guys. And I want to just say, I really appreciate what you guys are doing, right? Even just shining some spotlight on some of what the InsurTechs out here are building. And keep it up. And thanks for having me.